We're going to talk today about something that is obviously very popular, right? By the looks of it, AI in action, right? Transforming UE workflows with AI tools. And you may be wondering what gives us the pizzazz to be able to try and give you this presentation today. So my name is Luis Placid. I'm the Director of Engineering at ICVR, and my background includes a long stint on Halo Infinite as a tool lead. I worked at DNIG in the thankfully Oscar-winning teams, not just my work, the work of amazing people. Done work at Apple, and right now I just get called as a sledgehammer to the current team, which I have the pleasure of being part of.
Okay, hello, I'm Shazzy. I am the Director of Emerging Production Technology, very long title. But I deal with working on workflows and pipelines, and before that I was the head of Unreal Development at WildBrain for 5 years. We shipped 14 TV episodic, so most of those were 20 plus episodes for 22 minutes. And my fun fact is the pipeline I designed rendered out 10 million frames across 5 years. So.
Thank you. So I just want to give them a big disclosure. I understand that we're going to be talking about something that is potentially very debatable topic. It sometimes gets people up to fisticuffs. Please do not rush the stage, right? And we just want to make sure that we give a significant set of disclaimers and assumptions, right? The main one is that we have noticed, even in our talk, that automation, regardless of whatever form or shape that is, it's like would always be the thing that you will be friendly, making sure that your pipelines are as robust as possible, and like the pain points of both your developers and your artists, that they can have something that they can be creative and like develop and help. That will triumph whatever we get to talk to today. Right? At the same time, I do need to let you know that there's a lot of tons of models today, right, that are available of all different kinds. Our talk, right, does take place of a study that we're going to explain pretty shortly, but took place a little while ago, and we know that there's even like VO3 that just came out and is driving everybody by storm, right? And even though we do talk about what those models are, that data almost is kind of relevant in some points because of how quickly the AI world is developing, right? At the same time, because those models are coming in pretty quickly, right? A lot of you are trying the latest and greatest. We want to make sure that you guys keep your IP and your studio safe. The last thing that we want you to do is go online, get an open source model, and then potentially expose very, very sensitive information of your company, right? Because the last thing that you want to do is just, for some companies, go to bed and then hear, ha-ha, before that's the last time you wake up, right? Right? At the same time, we support anybody building tools, right? Building tools is something that you should always be striving for and optimizing and giving everybody around you the ability to be creative, right? That said, all the tools that we're going to discuss today and the AI models and everything that we research is not sponsoring any of this talk. We actually did purposely use tools that are off the shelf to represent what anybody here in this room can start doing today. So, without further ado, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the AI workflows using Unreal, but in a way that is talking about the asset lifecycle from the beginning to end, right? We're doing so by comparing a short that we did at ICVR, 15-minute short cinematic, right? In which we took a series of scenes and then put it on a timeline of 8 weeks, and we said we're going to do a replication of how close can we get with off-the-shelf AI solutions, right? Our goals was to figure out what were the differences in the creative process, what production gotchas and challenges that we got, as well as how close this technology of today gets us. I understand that not many of you have seen Lightfall, and I can't play all of it today. We recommend you go to our YouTube channel to check it out. But what we're going to do is show you the scene that we actually did. There we go. One of the amazing things about Lightfall is that we use this as our own internal studio IP to test our brand new technologies. I cannot stress how much it is important that you try and pursue this with your own teams. It could be either a game or a short cinematic for you to pick up new technologies like megalights or the new nanite foliage that was announced, and then see what it changes in your everyday IP and how you can apply it better without having to mess somebody else's production code or client IP. All right, so now I want to show you what we actually did, and again, this was completely just doing assets directly to Unreal, rendering out of Unreal, right? And then just text prompting, video generating, sorry, no video generation whatsoever, just asset generation. So as you can see, it does not match what our team did, but I can't wait to show you the potential. This is where it gets absolutely unhinged, and we can see what we can actually do. If you then add beyond Unreal, models for video generation that would do passes to stylize, for example, and increase the fidelity of what you cost, right? The potential of this shows you that you can attack lots of different industries. And I know that's very concerning for a lot of people. But we have a lot to talk about today in which we will show you all the different processes that went to go through this so we can have this feeling and this result. So, what went in?
This is our workflow. I'm just kidding. I think one important thing as we're going through this to keep in mind with the introduction of AI is now you have all these different departments going into each other at the same time. So building a production workflow becomes even crazier than real time. 2D is going to 3D, 2D is going to video, 2D is going to Unreal, Unreal is going to, you're just in a crazy circle. We're going to break this down a lot more, but again, at scale for a studio, you have so much more data going across at the same time. So very quickly, I'm gonna tee it up with a traditional workflow, which means we're gonna grab data and look at the team that made the original Lightfall, all human done. So this is our team size. We worked on it from August 2023 to December 2023, roughly 7,200 hours. And here's kind of the breakup of the team that did the 15 minutes. So we had a smaller team work on the 1 minute, but just so you have some context of this was the size of the team for the 15 minutes. This is the original design. So if you've been on shows or studios or whatever, your designs can do this. You might have turns, but this is what the art team started with for the statue. So what we're going to do is we picked one asset from that short and we compared data, financial, time, and cost of how long and how much did it take to do this hand done versus AI assisted. So I'm going to take you very quickly through the traditional one because it's been the least exciting. So modeling stage was 170 hours. This is, again, out of production where you have art directors, you have notes, you have a back and forth going, you're working with the designers, you're doing proxies and building it out with an artist rate of $60 an hour. Every country is going to have a different rate, junior, seniors, different rates. So please switch that with what you want. We just kind of put a base in there. Yes, Luis.
Yes, I would like to repeat Shazzy statement, please. This is a number that we're just using as a baseline. Do not come in and, again, rush the stage to let us know, hey, it's 60, it's 100. We do not know if you're junior, if you're senior, if you're like a specialist.
Yes. So at the artist cost, we are at roughly 10K. We used Maya for this, which has a license cost. We're going to do it bi-monthly. I understand, again, usually studios buy it for a year. You switch users. There's also amortized builds. If you're a production person, we can get into this. We are just trying to put data because that's the first thing everybody is asking about. Number two, going into surfacing. This is, again, the work you're doing in Substance, so texturing and bringing all that to life. Same artist rate, it's essentially assuming the same artist. Almost $5,000, Maya is Substance used again. And the last step is bringing it into Unreal and doing some look dev and lighting, setting it up for a turntable and kind of prepping it for the final scene. So we are putting an Unreal Engine cost because, again, we're assuming you're a big studio and you're paying for 5.4 or later. So here's the numbers. Here is the final cost for this asset, around $16,000. It took about 2 months. There's your TCC costs. Again, we can argue all day, is it high, low, whatever. We just need some sort of benchmark on what this asset costs. And now Luis is going to go through the AI-assisted workflow for that same asset.
So, you saw a whole bunch of information in regards, but I hope that everybody can understand here that that's usually your normal process, regardless of if you're doing it for film or you're doing it for games, right? You're going from your asset conceptualization stage all the way to its look dev, its surfacing, etc. We did the same, but I'm gonna do a little bit of audience participation for a little bit, and then can my film people let me know how many polys do you think that asset should be? It should be less than 10,000 triangles, raise your hand. No? Okay, between 10,000 and 50,000 triangles? Okay. And then how about 500,000 triangles or more? Or, yeah, okay, there he goes. So my game people, option 1, raise your hand. So option 2, 10,000 to 50,000. Okay, and then option 3, game people? Oh, okay, perfect. So here's the funny thing. There were more of you raising your hand on the option 3 in the film side, and there were many of you raising your hand on for the first option on the game side, which is something that you're actually gonna have to factor in. This is part of your AI workflow. When you start looking into the traditional workflows, our results, which were different, again, entirely prompt generated. It took us 170 hours on the meat bag version. That's how I'm gonna go refer to the humans now, right? 17,000 triangles, right? And on our AI workflow, the GPU, right, which we thank every day before the AI overlords take over, artist hours were only 14, but it was a whopping 127,000 triangles when it finished, right? What does this mean to you, right? That you have to try and figure out what the time you're gonna spend, and it's still being found of what we're gonna end up doing, because models are different. Like where you use it is gonna be different. Do you spend more time on the 2D art to try and prompt the AI better? Do you spend more time giving representative 3D art to the prompt? But then you're doing work. And a lot of people just think that AI is a silver bullet that's gonna come in, right? But our workflow, once we started kind of going through the absolutely unhinged side of like trying to figure out the image references, the text prompts, the control net, we actually decided it's fairly linear in a way, right? You get your image reference, you throw it into an image generation model. We publish the shot grid because we're film people, right? And then we have an art director try to review it. And then if it's approved, we just move that mesh for the next step. Or if we we have to do a fix, we basically just go back or even Photoshop it at times, right?
Okay, so here's an example of how the design process actually changed for doing mesh generation. Is you will often do multiple turns now. Again, you might have this from a traditional workflow, but the models that we use, which we will talk about, having multi-view got us better results. So now your image generation process is changing. And when I go into the character process, we actually start splitting up assets into multiple parts so you get higher fidelity in all of that. So you do have a different workflow that comes up for that. For our mesh generation, we did use Rodin. We did compare a few other ones. We also used Ludus, which I'll show you in a few slides. So in that second video that you saw, everything was AI generated in there, but they did have to be touched by humans. So here's just some of them from there. We did use Ludus AI, which is a plugin inside of Unreal that you can kind of chat with, and it can generate meshes. It has other features in there, but we mostly used it for mesh generation. And here's one of the examples of chatting with it. Some of the things that we did have to decimate assets afterwards. The scale wasn't correctly. Obviously, you had to rescale stuff. But how it works is it puts in kind of a temp placeholder, kind of like the mega scans workflow, right? You drag an asset out, and it's kind of like temp, and then it comes in. It was very similar. Ludus also worked much better with kind of more generic prompts. So you saw we had a lot of like wood pillars and doors and medieval stuff. And the more detailed we did the prompt for it, it actually didn't quite generate what we wanted. So the more vague we were, the better results that we got for that. So we used Rodin and we used Ludus AI for mesh generation in there. And again, we did have to touch it. Most of it, again, if you're also on a production, you're going to be bringing this into Maya or Blender because you have to publish it. You might have to fix up some UVs. You might have to retexture things. So there is an element of human touch to it to get it at a production level. We also use the Dash plugin in Unreal to kind of do some of the scattering of those metal like flower things that were also all AI generated. So again, we're also looking at like how can we work faster in here and what is available to move as quickly as possible. And actually, this is probably like one of the biggest time savers, which in Unreal, like obviously I come from film and TV, and there's a misconception of like, oh, it's Unreal, we can put everything in there like how games do. Well, you saw the number, like who raised their hands for 500,000 triangles. Like you can't really put a whole bunch of assets at that scale in there because it's going to get really slow, and we're working in there. It's again, like with integration of AI, your scene planning becomes 10 important. So generally, like how this was done on the original Lightfalls, we built the entire environment out there, which also a lot of directors want because like we want to go everywhere. But if you just generate, a skybox or mats or anyone who, it's not a new concept, we popped it back there, put some fog, and now we didn't have to build all of that. It renders faster, but you also have to be decided on those camera shots. But this actually saved it, like there was hundreds of assets back there that were used. The other thing I'll say too is just because you can do AI generated, there's also marketplace workflows. Like a lot of this stuff, some of you are probably looking like, why didn't you just buy that from the marketplace? That's a fair assessment. And if there's, your AI subscriptions are probably going to cost more than buying a $20 pack from the marketplace that maybe has similar things. So again, for this, we wanted an apples to apples to comparisons, but for your own projects, you should really evaluate of like, what is the best approach to get things quickly? Like, do we need to be custom modeling things that really we can buy out there quickly? So again, here's some just props that we pulled in comparisons of their triangles. It's funny, some were higher, lower, AI generated versus traditional, which was really interesting. There was not necessarily total consistent theme. And again, if it's AI generated, like there's an argument now you can go make LODs and things like that, but sometimes if your mesh isn't built correctly, you're gonna have other issues. So again, just trying to pull data. Here's everything assembled inside of the scene. And again, when you're doing all this, we had like a QC assessment. Like just because you can upload an image and generate a mesh, and a lot of people are like bringing that in and they're like, look how fast it is. When you're at a studio or you're working on a product, you're gonna have, is it visually matching my design? Like that's super important to see. Is the topology good? If this needs to go to rigging, that's a different conversation. There's a lot of like hand touching there. Does it have the mesh groups that I need so that my materials get assigned correctly? Because a lot of these just assign one material slot to everything and you can't quite control all of that. It's if it becomes a final asset. My poly count, do I need to subdivide it? Do I need to decimate it? Like there's usually your chances that it's like, great, I'll put this is very low. And then UVs, are my UVs good? If I like my mesh, but I want custom textures, do I have UVs that I can work with? Generally also very challenging. So this is like kind of, you wanna build some assessment as you're making things to quickly know like, hey, this mesh is good, let me move it on. The one other thing too is how is it used in the scene? If you're not touching it, it's in the background. If it's kind of crappy, great, like it's totally fine, it doesn't matter. Like not everything has to have this bar, but you need some sort of rules because the amount of data you can start generating becomes really insane. And pretty chart. Yeah, and so then the AI asset generation workflow for like mesh generation, we ended up in this nice little, we tried to condense it to all the things that we went and found and how we went to study this. But
Honestly, if I were to actually show you what oh, you almost put a picture in it. So that's basically how we tried to crawl with this. It was all kinds of questions and decisions and Chassis and I yelling at each other about what are we gonna use? Why do we need rodent? Can we pay for this? At the same time, some of the models you needed to actually feed that data, and we decided we wanna do this raw as I'm an independent. I don't have all these things because let's face it, there's a lot of work that's gonna have to come into all this process, right? Especially if I'm gonna talk about the big corporation studios. If you wanna match a specific set of your style, your look, be it the Studio Ghibli, the Pixar, but in actual asset-generated models, you're gonna have to feed it a lot of data. And here's a big caveat that I wanna tell you. A lot of people are talking about AI being the good solution, but they're actually not talking about, in order to get to that feeding and looking like your data, you're gonna have to actually feed it your data. And surprise, I've been in both games and film, your data sucks. It's not prepared. You're gonna have to tag it, you need to clean it up, you need to sometimes extract it from where it is. Sometimes it's done on an FBX version that doesn't even, somehow it's not compatible anymore. And you're gonna have to deal with all of this to be able to even start feeding your models, and it starts generating things. A lot of people are just kind of, we're not gonna do that now, and they're starting to train as they go from okay, from this point on, we're gonna start feeding it its data. That's a very good suggestion. And we recommend that you kind of also explore that approach, right? There's a whole bunch of tools, and we are happy to then, once this gets posted, we'll dig the links and put all these informationals for you if you wanna just, hey, I wanna replicate how they started. So, but we decided to even challenge ourselves because we're crazy like that, and we're also gonna digital asset manage with AI. So we then started having it auto-tag everything that we generated and everything that actually went into our process to try and figure out the best scenario. And we're going back to, I wanted to just take it back to a couple of the things that as we started doing the AI modeling and surfacing, right? I wanted to give you the first round, right? If you're thinking of using AI to hey, I'm gonna generate high fidelity assets right now, hands down, me and Chassis confidently can tell you, it's gonna be really damn costly, really damn difficult, right? It is possible, right? But you have to factor in that even though you're getting a cost savings, how much are you actually taking in of the things that you're pre-training, the GPU, and that's the thing. We purposely ignored. In this talk, I don't know if you noticed that we're not talking about anything that has to do with hardware, licensing on regardless of processing power, tokens. We just kind of gave you that part, but the hardware, that's a different beast, right? So you also have to factor that in. We're just doing apples to apples comparison on just what we generated. And, one second, I need to remember the note for this one. Okay. The other thing, so round 2 of this fight, right, meat bags versus AI, is, okay, which one looks best, right? Let's face it, if you put these two, right, we did them quicker. You could go and say, hey, you could have just go and prompt the exact same amount of time and potentially get closer. But we were looking at our iterations were getting almost more of the same and more of this more slop, not really pushing forward in any way the quality level of what we were generating. So we just kind of say meh, good enough, right? Which, if you're an art people, sorry, that's just ooh, I know that's just style, right? There's no such thing as good enough. Art is never done until somebody janks it for you, because let's face it, there's a producer that will be that's done, right? And then, there are the workflow considerations as an artist that I want to do, which the meat bags get another really big punch in, right? Which is, on all this, we still had to do human work, right? There was geometry artifacts on every single one of the assets that we generated. There was a lot of decimation and subdividing that we had to do. We did a lot, some of the topography was just insane, right? And we had to do all these work and ingest it into the pipeline. And the biggest problem that I feel I found it, and that's why I demanded this slide, is that there was a lot of really eager people giving you very repeated feedback that then ended up in us trying to redo all this work. So sometimes now the challenge is gonna be if we generate all these things, you're going faster. Hey, guess what? The bottleneck is not gonna be anymore the cost, is gonna be a meat bag, which is in the form of a supervisor that has to go and review all these things, right? All these scenes that you're generating. And it's gonna just funnel it up and they're gonna be like, now we're gonna have to AI them. And if we go all collectively be like, let's AI the producer's job. I'm pretty sure that's where AI stops now. We don't use it anymore, right?
Okay, so again, trying to put some linear workflow around. We've kind of done the first half here, right? We have our designs and some text prompts going to 3D mesh generation. We're always doing an asset conform at this stage. I'm gonna talk about rigging next a little bit, but again, there's always a conform stage no matter if you're using AI rigging tools, animation tools, like you just have to touch it, a supervisor review, a publish to shock grid, and an Unreal import. And once you get into import, this process, like you can have LOD or an anti-generation, you're doing turntables for approval, you're doing look dev for lighting, you're doing range of motion tests, you're building lighting templates, you're building your sets and all this type of stuff, and then it goes into shots. And while there's fix needed, that's also all going back and forth. And again, something Luis was saying about the reviews is also deciding where's the review happening. If I'm not happy, do I go back to design and try to regenerate the mesh, or I just say, hey, modeling artist, go spend 10 more hours fixing this? Like those are where we're gonna have to start seeing the balances of things. So going into characters, because they looked super dandy in our test. Funny enough, this character's name is Laura. This is not like AI terminology Laura. Her name is Laura. This was done like 2 years ago, so just please ignore that. So this is when I was talking about 4 designs. These were all generated with Stable Diffusion and then broken up into these parts, because when we generate meshes, you get higher fidelity and then we combine it all back together. So for characters, we never upload an entire image unless it is a background character that we do not care about and we're kind of just trying to fill a scene and they're super far away. But for main characters, this is what the design process looks like now. Here's Rodin. You can see her uploading the different parts of her head and her clothing into there and having those generated. And here she is in Unreal. We originally actually assembled her all in an A pose. Turned out the rigging tools and some of the animation tools required it in a T pose, so there was some manual intervention to get her into the T pose, not looking totally berserk. Background characters I was talking about, we did not care. They are at the very, very end and they are static. You can't quite see their faces. They're very scary, especially the one with the axe. 16,000 triangles, they're back there, they're not doing much. You can probably do some like world position offset animation on them or some vertex animation if you need it. Good enough for what we're doing. And then the bookseller, same thing, kind of assembled into parts and then brought back together. Here is a comparison of the poly counts. Obviously, we kind of use the meta-human base for the original, and there is groom on the first one, whereas the AI-generated one is just kind of meshes, so you can kind of see the comparison there, and obviously the fabric and the cloth and all those little details. Going into rigging and animation. So we did use Mixamo for rigging. I'm not going to totally go into that. I think it's been around for a long time, but it is an auto. For those of you who don't know, it's an auto rigging tool to kind of, if you have humans, you can plop a skeleton and kind of reskins it, all that. We did have to touch some of it up inside of Maya because the head was totally crazy. So there was some cleanup around there and trying to do some with the fabric. But again, it's a fine line, right? We could have spent a week making it work now, and now it becomes a human kind of workflow. So we're trying to okay, let's use these AI tools and minimally touch it up. We could have went and touched it and rigged it completely to perfection to match the first one and say it was AI, but it's not really a true comparison. We're trying to not touch it. So this was deep motion, where you can put a text prompt to generate some animation. So we were trying to do this for the bookseller, where he kind of puts his hand up and touches the flower thing. It wasn't quite exactly what we needed, but we did use this, and the animator did kind of have do this, generated a different skeleton than Mixamo. We bring it into Unreal, and we had to do some retargeting, and then there was some animation cleanup done in Engine, kind of doing some motion matching and blending in the sequencer to try to get it a little better.
On that particular one, as you can see, even our Mixamo animation that we generated out of the AI, you see an extended hand. We're gonna show you the video at the end so you see the very clear difference. But I know some of you started laughing when the hand went up and it was janky as hell. So, yeah.
Yes. And then another AI like FBX animation generation tool was Motorica, which you can, so both of these have options kind of for text prompts or passing in videos. This is a little bit more similar to Cascadeur, if you've heard about that, where you can kind of mark your first frame and your last frame, and you have some control around like the speed and what it's doing and all this type of stuff. So we did use this for the character Laura when she's walking in. Again, a big thing, we could have probably just bought some walk cycles from the marketplace. So again, you don't try to use AI for the sake of using AI. Like if it's a human, go buy stuff from the marketplace. If you're doing some cool backflips and stuff, that would be a great test. But when we did try to do kind of more challenging animation like that, it does not hold up as well. So again, not today, but we love that there's systems being built. So we generate all this stuff, we bring it into Unreal, and then the layout process is very similar, right? Like we had originally kind of gray box the area to figure out what assets we need to generate, and that was super important because we're breaking up like, okay, how do we, we're not gonna just mesh generate the entire wall. Like how do we do reusable pieces and make these components? So we're still using a lot of the same practices of like how do we build a scene with those smart choices and bringing that all up. We bring it in, we bring in the animation. Like I said, there was some retargeting done for the rigs because the skeletons weren't the same, and then just some blending in the sequencer. But again, the goal wasn't like make this perfect and match. It's just like, hey, how quickly can we get to somewhere? And I think again, for those of you in previs, rough layout, like this is a very quick workflow. Like you get custom assets, you get some animation in there, you're doing your stuff very quickly, and you can get to a good look very, very quickly. One quick thing about lighting. So lighting we just did traditionally, we used our light rigs. If you are going to then go into the video restyling models where you're taking a frame out of Unreal and then passing it to a video model, you need to kick up your brightness, you will get better results. That was not something we were expecting, that we found out like, hey, it actually can't figure out or see some of the details when it's super dark and gloomy. So you do have a different lighting setup before you feed that into a video model. And here's another thing that we tested of like, hey, we generated these assets, maybe some of them, like maybe we don't want to touch them. We want 0 hours, we just generate it, we bring it in, throw post-process on it. Does it blend things better? Again, it's like looking at these strategies, like if you want to say, I did this in like 10 hours and look at all these shots and you want to kind of like blend some stuff, use a post-process. It kind of blends some of the weird artifacts and things like that. And then you're like, oh, look, it's an art direction look. So again, another strategy that we did to see if that works. And again, here's a quick side-by-side of, the differences. Blockout was the same, like I was saying, you go in there. The second line, again, for traditional, we weren't doing asset generation. That was just importing assets, using some marketplace stuff to quickly get in there. AI assisted, again, importing its stuff, you're touching stuff. Material generation is the same, they both need normals. The AI assisted, you're actually probably generating more normal maps because a lot of them just give you a base color. Modular asset preparation, so again, for that, there was more time on the traditional because we were kind of building out a lot of these reusable packs and things like that, and we had a larger scene for that back environment. Where for the AI assisted, we just used that like skybox. So that's where I was like, that was a huge saving there. It's like now we don't have to build this whole city, and you can kind of see the rest of it, the scene assembly for a larger thing and all that type of stuff. So there is a big difference there in numbers and video generation.
Yeah. So. There was a big difference. I kind of want to go back one more. So there was a big difference in number, but remember, there was a lot of touch-ups that still happened. And with the quality bar in the time frame that we said, like that we established as a absolute goal, that time difference, we expect that this would be matched or even exceeded based on the fact of trying to get it to the fidelity of the original. Original would have taken significantly longer time, right? So, but going back to the AI video workflow, this is that part that I said, this is the potential, right? So this is already starting to move outside of Unreal Engine, right? It's when you start bringing you give the reference image, the first frame and the last frame. If you're using a stylization model, generally they request this data. And then even the reference video of everything that you want to stylize, right? And then you just plug it into a video model, right? And then we go, same deal, right? We're just giving you the kitchen sink of everything that we did, shot grid publish, director, meat bag review, and then fix anything that needed to be fixed, right? Go back and then editorial for cutting and like putting audio on. So As you can see on the left, that was the original base ref that we got from the video that we had already generated using the generated assets that we entered. A different set of text prompts happened, right? This is how we want our character to look by using a different model, right? And then we gave it a style reference, so we want it moody, dark, like, medieval, right? And then it generates a pretty freaking convincing image, right? That you can start putting through, right? But remember, in all these things in AI generation, like that image, you think it's consistent, it's not gonna be. Like we did see, that's another punch from the meat bags, and I don't know if you already noticed that I'm punching for the meat bags. So. And again, we will share this. I know it's really hard. We try to compress it as much as possible, right? We're happy to give you the kitchen sink of the entire AI, like image to video workflow that we use of extracting our prompts. So, and plug this in, right? We use Runway to do this, right? So, and here's an actual screenshot of how each of our scenes, and we didn't hide anything. This is how many generations it took, because some of them were absolutely crazy, right? When they were going through and required a lot more generations, especially things that had, I don't know why the AI didn't like the old man. It was like everything needed to be generated like way more times. And it looks pretty good, right? Like straight out of the engine, right? So it was something that we're like, okay, this is great, right? Fidelity significantly increased, right? In some aspects, fidelity was better than the original video that we were testing the technology on, right? So it kind of looks like this. So the uncanny valley is a little bit, removed, but then I do understand that then it struggled based on the fact that our subject matter was a different thing. But one of the funniest things is like her face changes like every single step that she makes. Right? So we're like, okay, that's something that we're gonna have to art direct, right? We did some fireflies that we never even knew that they were there. And yeah, again, different character, different look to her. Like now she has a hoodie, and we're like, okay. And then we're just like, all right, right? So the statues are completely changed, right? So it was a pretty fun set of like how we're doing. But like, here's where it gets back to the potential, and where it gets really freaking awesome and unhinged is the fact that like you feed that model, you can stylize, right? We stylize in so many different ways, right? So dark and moody, and like I was even like we had it like claymation model, which I'm super into claymation. I was like, whoa! I was like, what the hell is that, right? And then like some of them were super creepy and funny, but yeah, there's a lot of potential. You can. If you really think you can actually bring down your upfront cost to doing some of the stuff, and this is where you start getting that nice little, I want to direct that they go here. I want to like direct that this, this house, we move it in the background, and you just fight the AI a little bit, not as much, right? And you get something pretty good, right? So again, letting you know that we're not going to hide anything. Here is all the AI tools that we use for our video and post-processing as we did our decision tree, right? We ended up using Runway. Tiny caveat there, which I should have said from the beginning, but like we did use Pika for the stylization of the first frame and the last frame, because we found that we really liked more what the output out of that was. But Runway was better to do the entire kind of full video side of things. Is like the good thing is, here's something that I want you to pay attention once you go and be like, hey, this guy at like Unreal Fest is like Shazzy said like this is awesome in the potential. Look at the third column. You have the laser. Put the third column is really important. Locally hosted. That is something that every studio infosec manager is gonna like just scream at you if you try to be like, hey, kind of run this model, right? Because then they don't know where the model is being trained and where is it going. So again, be safe, right?
And also, again, like we did there's new models coming out like all the time. So I know there's many that came out that can be locally hosted and things like that. So again, at the time that we did this, like it is the Wild West of models coming out. So again, take this with a grain of salt. Like if you are forced to be locally hosted, there is solutions, but you will be building a lot more pipelines and comfy UI workflows and things like that. So unless you have, you're at a big company, you can go have conversations with Runway and all this type of stuff, and maybe there's some enterprise deals or whatever, like be super, super mindful of that, because like Louis said, just uploading stuff. Again, if you're an indie person or it's your own studio and you're like, yeah, go do it, whatever, that's a whole different conversation. Like again, we come from, medium, big size studios where your level of like security and all that type of stuff is super, super tight. Yeah. So again, just if you're an indie developer, creator, like again, I have my own indie project. I'm like all over the place. I'm like, whatever, I don't care. Like,
I come from studios that like building Unreal, for those who are developers here, that it tries to register on your machine, like that triggers an admin prompt. I needed to send an IT ticket and wait until like those kind of strikes. So these are important things that they will bug you about, right? For those crazy of you that are following on our social media, I'm sorry, but then I did promise on my social media and Shazzy's social media that we're gonna show you some bloopers of the absolutely crazy things that we did, right? So the AI was like, you really need a van in this scene, right? So like, we're gonna put that there. Somehow it's like, I'm gonna split her into like 3 parts because that's moody and great, right? And then the big one is like, we just asked it, make the girl turn around. And then we're like, whoa, nightmare fuel, right? So it's like, absolutely, like, we did not wanna go and touch that because we're like, ugh. This is, like not even like 1% of what went wrong. So we have it's funny, you're gonna enjoy it. I found that it was enjoyable just to see what really went messy. But yeah, I guess it adds a little pizzazz to your day that things just go wrong, right? And then the last thing that we both wanna talk about before we go into the Q&A, and part of this part, again, we said it, we were clear, right? We confidently state that the potential is really, really good in several areas. And for you as a major studio or like somebody contemplating either on your game side, you need to do a lot of reckoning and tuning to be able to actually get it to the point that you need it to be. Because that data management and at the same time, the poly counts and all that decision tree is a beast. It's a really, really huge beast, right? We didn't talk about these things right now on it, and that's just even a bigger set of like discussions that you're gonna have. Like the data management of all these generations that then you're pushing and like hundreds of different captures of assets into your shot grid, especially if you automate it and then it goes insane. And then you only have so much sanity on your supervisors to check this out. The GPU usage, then we go into like what GPU, what costs. Some of them are very strictly prohibited as entering. Do you want to talk about the model management?
Yeah. So again, like the ones that can be locally hosted, like you need to standardize some sort of process, because when we initially started this, we talked to all of our artists and every single one had a different workflow, different models they like, different tools that way you're using, and that you can't do that at a production scale. Like and it's really hard to narrow that down because the best one's probably not even out yet. So it's like you need to try to like narrow things down and put stuff in place, because everyone just using whatever, there's a lot of consistency issues, right? So it's like, how do you track what people are doing? Like, are you making everyone put their prompts into ShotGrid so you can go back to see what the prompt was? Like just basic stuff like that, to like, what version of the models are they using? Oh, these 2 models I want to use together, but they both need different Python versions. There's a whole pipeline thing around that. And then, the joyous one, the legal department. We're not lawyers, but at a big company, they have very strong opinions, and they're also trying to make decisions right now. This is new to them as well. So everyone in all of these departments are trying to figure this out. So as much as we're getting frustrated maybe with legal, they're like, well, why don't you have the pipeline figured out? Like everyone's trying to figure it out right now. So just, again, there's a lot of things in play. IP, how are you protecting your IP? Do you care about your IP? Like, are you giving your IP out? Like, there's a lot of different opinions around that too. Like, oh, give it out, let people make it and use games with it. You know, that's one opinion that we saw today. Another one's like, don't let anybody touch it. And there's like 30 NDAs on it.
Exactly. And then on the top of that, like, you know, that legal IP, it goes beyond the actual like assets that you're generating and how you're training it. Right? At the same time as where we live in a world in which let's face it, it's a politicalized state that is pretty awesome, right? That's what I'm going to go with. And then you have to actually figure out where those models are coming from, where that data is actually being used, and where it's hosted, because it has significant implications, especially if you're in a significant studio that works across different global locations, right? That also impacts you. Because it could be that you're literally importing a model that is deemed illegal in one country versus another one. So those are things that, again, take this with a lot of thought and consideration before you go and bug like everybody around your IT team. So, right.
And then obviously we did a little bit of cost, but again, like there's a cost to building a pipeline. Okay, now we need to hire engineers and people that understand this pipeline to build tools and processes around this. There's, you know, costs for training artists on how to use these tools. Like there's just costs everywhere. So again, all these different considerations, we didn't get into it at all. So we do want to give a special thank you to the actual humans on our art team that worked on the original and worked on this, and they shared so many of their workflows, and they worked on this, and they were super excited testing stuff. So again, this was the team, and we just want to give like a special thanks to them because we would not be able to do a lot of this without them. So round of applause.
Yeah.